A limousine pulls up to the modest duplex in Riverside Heights. A 16-year-old Jasmine Rivers stares in disbelief from her front window. A man in an expensive suit steps out, flanked by assistants carrying official-looking documents. 24 hours earlier, she had given her last $5 to help a stranger buy medicine for his sick wife. Now that same stranger stands at her door. "Jasmine Rivers?" The man asks when she opens the door with trembling hands. "Yes, sir," she whispers, her grandmother Ruby appearing behind her, equally confused. The man smiles warmly. "My name is Theodore Ashfield. Yesterday, you gave me your last $5 when you thought I couldn't afford my wife's medication." Jasmine's eyes widen as she recognizes him. The elderly man at the pharmacy who had seemed so desperate, counting change that wasn't enough. "What you didn't know," Theodore continues, his voice filled with emotion, "is that I'm the CEO of Ashfield Technologies, and your act of kindness yesterday reminded me why I started my foundation." He gestures to his assistant, who steps forward with a folder. "Jasmine, I'd like to offer you a full scholarship to any university you choose, plus a trust fund to ensure you and your grandmother never worry about money again." Jasmine's legs nearly give out. The girl who worked double shifts at the diner, who wore the same 3 outfits to school, who gave away her last dollar to help a stranger, was about to have her entire life transformed, all because she chose kindness when she had nothing left to give. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. 26 hours earlier, Jasmine Rivers had awakened in the small duplex she shared with her grandmother Ruby in the Riverside Heights neighborhood of Portland, Oregon. The alarm clock's harsh buzzing at 5:30 a.m. marked the beginning of another exhausting day that would test her resilience in ways she couldn't imagine. At 16, Jasmine carried responsibilities that would overwhelm most adults. Her grandmother Ruby, now 68 and suffering from diabetes and arthritis, had raised her since she was 4 years old after Jasmine's mother died in a car accident. Her father had never been in the picture, leaving Ruby as the only family Jasmine had ever known. The duplex they rented for $800 a month was small but clean, with Ruby's careful touches making it feel like home, despite their financial struggles. Hand-sewn curtains covered windows that needed caulking, and furniture from thrift stores was arranged, with the eye of someone who understood how to create beauty from very little. Jasmine's daily routine was a carefully orchestrated balance between school, work, and caring for her grandmother. As a junior at Riverside High School, she maintained a 3.9 GPA despite working 25 hours a week at Murphy's Diner, a local restaurant where she served coffee and comfort food to working-class customers who tipped when they could afford it. Her academic performance was remarkable, considering the circumstances. Teachers like Mr. Felix Grant, her biology instructor, had noticed her exceptional analytical mind and natural curiosity about scientific concepts. Mrs. Dorothy Hammond, the guidance counselor, had been encouraging Jasmine to consider college applications. Though they both knew the financial barriers seemed insurmountable. "You have the intelligence to succeed anywhere," Mrs. Hammond had told her just the week before. "We need to find a way to make college possible for you." But Jasmine's immediate concerns were more pressing than long-term educational dreams. Ruby's medical expenses consume most of their modest income, even with Medicare covering some costs. The diabetes medication alone cost $180 a month, and the arthritis treatment added another $120. Between rent, utilities, food, and medical expenses, they lived paycheck to paycheck with no margin for emergencies. That Tuesday morning, Jasmine had checked their finances and found exactly $127.50 in their checking account, enough to cover Ruby's prescriptions with $550 left over. The next disability check wouldn't arrive for 6 days, meaning they would need to survive on whatever tips she earned at the diner, After ensuring Ruby had taken her morning medications and eaten breakfast, Jasmine walked to Riverside High School, her backpack containing textbooks from the library since they couldn't afford to buy them. Her clothes were clean and carefully maintained, though she owned only 3 school outfits that she rotated throughout the week. During lunch, while other students bought hot meals or brought food from home, Jasmine usually ate the free peanut butter sandwich provided by the school's assistance program. She had learned to time her meals carefully, eating a substantial breakfast and having a light dinner to make their food budget stretch. Her best friend, Caleb Waters, had noticed her sacrifices and often tried to share his lunch, though Jasmine politely declined, not wanting to burden anyone else with her problems. Caleb came from a working-class family that struggled financially, but they weren't facing the same level of daily survival challenges. Jazz, "You don't have to carry everything alone," Caleb had told her numerous times. People care about you and want to help, but Jasmine had learned early that accepting help often came with obligations she couldn't fulfill, and she preferred maintaining her independence and dignity through her own hard work and determination. After school, she would walk directly to Murphy's Diner, where she worked the dinner shift from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. Lorraine Mitchell, the manager, had been understanding about Jasmine's school schedule and family responsibilities, recognizing her reliability and work ethic. "That girl has more strength and character than most adults I know," Lorraine often told other employees. "She never complains, never asks for special treatment, just shows up and works harder than anyone else." Eddie Morse, the short-order cook, had become a father figure to Jasmine, sometimes sneaking extra food into her employee meal and offering wisdom from his own experience raising children as a single parent. That Tuesday evening, as Jasmine finished her shift and counted her tips, $23.40 for 6 hours of work, she felt the familiar weight of financial stress, but also a quiet pride in her ability to contribute to their survival. Walking home through the quiet streets of Riverside Heights, she had no way of knowing that the next day would bring an encounter that would test her character and ultimately transform her life forever. The next afternoon, Jasmine hurried through the sliding doors of Patterson's pharmacy, clutching the crumpled $20 bills and handful of coins that represented their medication fund. Ruby's diabetes prescription needed to be refilled, and they were down to the last 2 pills. A dangerous situation that couldn't wait. The pharmacy was busier than usual, with several elderly customers waiting in line and pharmacist Dr. Amanda Chen working efficiently behind the counter. Jasmine took her place in line, mentally calculating whether she had enough money for both prescriptions or if she would need to prioritize the diabetes medication over the arthritis pills. Behind her, she noticed an older man in his 50s, well-dressed but appearing increasingly agitated as he spoke quietly into his phone. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his suit expensive-looking, and his leather shoes suggested wealth, but his voice carried obvious distress. "Margaret, the insurance card isn't working," he said into the phone, his voice strained. "They're saying it's been declined, and I don't have enough cash with me. Can you call the insurance company?" As the line moved forward, Jasmine couldn't help but overhear more of his conversation. The man was trying to fill a prescription for his wife, who was apparently at home, suffering from severe pain. His voice broke slightly as he explained to someone, presumably his wife, that there was a problem with payment. When Jasmine reached the counter, Dr. Chen greeted her warmly. They had developed a relationship over the months of regular prescription pickups, and the pharmacist understood the family's financial situation without making it feel uncomfortable. "Hi, Jasmine. Ruby's usual medications?" Dr. Chen asked kindly. "Just the diabetes medication today," Jasmine replied quietly, handing over the money she had carefully counted. "I'll get the arthritis prescription next week." Dr. Chen nodded understanding, processing the transaction without judgment. As Jasmine waited for the prescription to be prepared, she couldn't help but notice that the well-dressed man behind her was becoming increasingly desperate. "Sir," The total is $127.80, the pharmacy technician was telling him. Your insurance isn't going through, and you have $119.15 in cash. The man's face fell as he looked through his wallet again, clearly hoping to find money that wasn't there. I don't understand. The insurance should cover this. My wife is in so much pain. Other customers in line were beginning to show impatience, but Jasmine felt her heart breaking for this stranger, whose desperation reminded her of her own daily struggles with medical expenses. She understood the panic of not having enough money for necessary medications. Without thinking through the consequences, Jasmine approached the counter and quietly placed a $5 bill next to the man's money. "I hope your wife feels better," she said simply. The man looked at her with surprise and confusion, then at the young girl who had just given him the money he needed. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly— It's okay," Jasmine interrupted gently. "I know what it's like to worry about someone you love." The pharmacy technician completed the transaction, and the man received his wife's medication. He turned to Jasmine with tears in his eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the kindness from a stranger who appeared to have so little. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea how much this means." "How can I repay you?" Jasmine shook her head. "Just take care of your wife. That's payment enough." As she walked home with Ruby's medication, Jasmine felt the familiar pang of anxiety about their financial situation. The $5 she had given away was money they couldn't afford to lose, money that would have bought dinner for 2 days or covered bus fare to school. But she also felt a warmth that had nothing to do with money, the satisfaction of helping someone else in need, of choosing compassion over self-preservation. It was a choice that reflected the values Ruby had instilled in her throughout her childhood. What Jasmine didn't know was that the grateful stranger was Theodore Ashfield, CEO of one of the largest technology companies in the Pacific Northwest, a man worth over $2 billion who'd been conducting a personal experiment in human kindness that had restored his faith in humanity at exactly the moment he needed it most. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That evening, as Jasmine worked her shift at Murphy's Diner, the reality of her impulsive generosity began to weigh heavily on her mind. She had given away their emergency money, the buffer that stood between them and complete financial disaster, to help a complete stranger. The diner was particularly busy, with the dinner rush lasting longer than usual and several large tables requiring extensive service. Despite the increased workload, Jasmine's tips were disappointingly low. By 9:30 p.m., she had earned only $18.75, far less than the usual Tuesday evening take. Crystal Barnes, the college student who worked the afternoon shift, noticed Jasmine's subdued mood as they cleaned tables together during a brief lull. "You seem stressed tonight, Jazz. Everything okay at home?" Jasmine hesitated, not wanting to burden her co-worker with personal problems, but feeling the weight of her decision. "I did something today that was probably stupid. Gave money to someone who needed it, but now I'm not sure how we're going to manage until Grandma's check comes." Crystal nodded sympathetically. She understood financial pressure from her own experience working through college while supporting herself. "Sometimes doing the right thing costs more than we can afford. But that doesn't make it wrong." Eddie Morse, overhearing the conversation while cleaning the grill, approached their table. At 42, he had raised 3 children as a single father and understood the impossible choices that poverty often demanded. "Jasmine, you've got character that most people twice your age don't have," he said quietly. "Whatever you did to help someone, that speaks to who you are inside. Money comes and goes, but integrity lasts forever." His words were comforting, but they didn't solve the practical problem of stretching $18.75 over 6 days while ensuring Ruby had proper meals and transportation to her doctor's appointment on Friday. When her shift ended at 10 p.m., Lorraine Mitchell called Jasmine aside. The manager had been watching her employee's performance and noticed the subtle signs of stress that came from financial worry. Jazz, you've been working extra hard lately. I know things are tight at home. If you want to pick up some extra hours this weekend, I can schedule you for the breakfast shift on Saturday." The offer was kind, but complicated. Extra hours meant more money, but they also meant less time for homework and studying. Jasmine was already struggling to maintain her academic performance while working 25 hours a week. "I'll take the breakfast shift," she decided. "Thank you, Mrs. Mitchell." Walking home through the quiet streets of Riverside Heights, Jasmine calculated and recalculated their finances. Ruby's doctor appointment would require a $20 copay. Transportation would cost $6 round trip. Food for the next 6 days needed to come from their remaining money and whatever she could earn in tips. The arithmetic was unforgiving. Even with the extra Saturday shift, they would be cutting meals and hoping no unexpected expenses arose. The $5 she had given to the stranger at the pharmacy now felt like a luxury they couldn't afford. When she arrived home, Ruby was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through medical bills and assistance program applications. At 68, her grandmother maintained meticulous records of their expenses and constantly sought ways to reduce costs without compromising essential needs. "How were tips tonight, sweetheart?" Ruby asked, looking up from the papers. "Light," Jasmine admitted, placing the 18.75 on the table. "Mrs. Mitchell gave me extra hours on Saturday, though." Ruby studied her granddaughter's face with the intuition that came from years of shared struggle. "Something else is bothering you. What happened today?" Jasmine sat down and told her grandmother about the encounter at the pharmacy, about the desperate man who couldn't afford his wife's medication, and about her decision to give him their emergency $5. Ruby was quiet for a long moment, processing the story and its implications for their already tight budget. Finally, she reached across the table and took Jasmine's hand. "You did the right thing, baby girl. When someone is hurting and you can help, you help. That's how I raised you, and that's how your mama would have wanted you to be. But now we don't have any buffer," Jasmine said, voicing her fear. "If something goes wrong, then we'll figure it out together like we always do," Ruby interrupted. "Your kindness is worth more than money, Jasmine. Don't ever let poverty steal your compassion." As they prepared for bed, neither woman could have imagined that Jasmine's act of generosity had set in motion events that would transform their lives in ways they never dared dream possible. While Jasmine worried about their finances that Tuesday night, Theodore Ashfield sat in his $4 million penthouse overlooking the Willamette River, profoundly changed by his encounter with a teenage girl whose generosity had shattered his growing cynicism about human nature. At 52, Theodore had built Ashfield Technologies from a garage startup into a multinational corporation worth $12 billion. His journey from middle-class origins to extraordinary wealth had been marked by brilliant strategic decisions, innovative product development, and an uncanny ability to anticipate market trends. But success had come with unexpected costs. Years of high-stakes business dealings had made him suspicious of others' motives, constantly wondering whether people approached him for genuine reasons or purely financial gain. The isolation of extreme wealth had created barriers between him and authentic human connection. His wife, Margaret, a former pediatric nurse who now directed their family foundation, had been expressing concern about Theodore's increasing detachment from the philanthropic work that had once energized him. "You used to light up when we talked about helping people," she had told him just the week before. "Now it feels like you're going through the motions, writing checks without feeling the impact." Theodore's crisis of faith had been building for months. Despite donating millions to various causes, he rarely witnessed the direct impact of his generosity. Philanthropy had become an abstract exercise in tax strategy and public relations, rather than meaningful human connection. That Tuesday, he had deliberately left his wallet at home and dressed down slightly, conducting what he privately called an authenticity test. He wanted to experience how ordinary people treated someone they perceived as struggling, rather than the deference and calculated kindness he received as a known billionaire. The pharmacy visit had been carefully planned. Margaret's arthritis medication was indeed needed, and Theodore had intentionally brought only enough cash to fall short of the total cost. He wanted to see how people responded to someone in genuine need. Most customers had ignored his quietly desperate phone calls and obvious distress. The pharmacy staff was professional but unsympathetic. Other people in line showed impatience rather than concern. Then Jasmine had appeared, a teenager who clearly had her own financial struggles. Judging by her careful counting of crumpled bills and decision to fill only one of her grandmother's prescriptions. Yet without hesitation, she had given him her last $5. "Caroline," Theodore said to his executive assistant when he called her that evening, "I need you to research someone for me. A 16-year-old girl named Jasmine Rivers. She works at a place called Murphy's Diner and shops at Patterson's Pharmacy." Caroline Webb had worked for Theodore for 8 years and recognized the particular tone he used when something had captured his full attention. "Is this related to a business matter, Mr. Ashfield?" "No," Theodore replied, looking out at the city lights below. "This is related to remembering why we do this work in the first place." By morning, Caroline had compiled a comprehensive but respectful background report on Jasmine and her grandmother. The information painted a picture of extraordinary resilience. A teenage girl maintaining honor roll grades while working 25 hours a week to help support a disabled grandmother, living paycheck to paycheck but never seeking publicity or assistance. School records showed remarkable academic performance despite obvious challenges. Teachers described Jasmine as mature, responsible, and naturally gifted in mathematics and sciences. Her work history at Murphy's Diner revealed perfect attendance and glowing recommendations from supervisors who praised her work ethic and character. "Sir," Carolyn said during their morning briefing, "this young woman appears to be everything we hope to find in scholarship recipients. But she's never applied for any assistance programs or academic scholarships." Theodore nodded, understanding the pride that often prevented deserving people from seeking help. What would it take to change her life completely? Not just college funding, but security for both her and her grandmother. Caroline pulled out her calculator and comprehensive assistance plan she had already begun drafting. Full university funding for any school she chooses, plus living expenses, would run approximately $300,000 over 4 years. A modest trust fund to eliminate their housing and medical expenses might require another $500,000. It's substantial, but hardly significant compared to your annual charitable giving. But Theodore was thinking bigger than basic assistance. "Caroline, what if we offered her something that would transform not just her immediate circumstances, but create opportunities for her to impact others the way she impacted me?" That conversation would lead to an offer that went far beyond simple scholarship funding. Comprehensive life transformation that would honor Jasmine's character while providing her with resources to extend her compassion on a scale she had never imagined possible. Theodore Ashfield spent Wednesday morning in his downtown office, but his mind was entirely focused on developing a plan that would honor Jasmine's character while providing her with opportunities that matched her potential. This wasn't going to be simple charity. It was going to be an investment in someone who had demonstrated the values he wanted to see multiplied in the world. "Margaret," he said to his wife, during their lunch meeting at her foundation office, "I want to tell you about something that happened yesterday that changed my perspective on everything we're doing." As Theodore recounted the pharmacy encounter, Margaret watched her husband's demeanor transform. For the first time in months, he was speaking about helping others with genuine emotion and excitement rather than obligation. "This girl didn't know who I was, didn't expect anything in return, and gave away money she clearly couldn't afford to lose," Theodore continued. "She embodies everything we claim to value in our philanthropy work." Margaret nodded thoughtfully. As a former nurse, she understood the daily sacrifices that poverty demanded and recognized the exceptional character required to choose generosity despite personal hardship. "What are you thinking?" she asked, already sensing that her husband was planning something significant. "I want to offer her more than just college funding," Theodore replied. "I want to create a comprehensive program that ensures she never has to choose between helping others and taking care of herself and her grandmother." Together, they began designing what would become the most personally meaningful philanthropic initiative of Theodore's career. The plan included immediate financial security, educational opportunities, and perhaps most importantly, resources that would allow Jasmine to extend her compassion to others facing similar struggles. Meanwhile, Dr. Helena Torres, director of the Ashfield Foundation, received an urgent call to join the planning meeting. Helena had overseen hundreds of scholarship programs and community assistance initiatives, but Theodore's description of this opportunity was unlike anything she had previously handled. "We're not just changing one person's life," Theodore explained to Helena. "We're identifying someone who has already demonstrated exceptional character and providing her with resources to multiply that positive impact." The team spent Wednesday afternoon developing a comprehensive proposal that addressed every aspect of Jasmine's current challenges while creating pathways for her future success. Financial security for both Jasmine and Ruby, educational funding that extended beyond undergraduate studies, and perhaps most importantly, resources to establish her own charitable initiatives. Executive Assistant Caroline Webb coordinated with attorney Maxwell Brennan to ensure all legal aspects were properly structured. The assistance would be provided through a combination of educational grants, family support funds, and a trust designed to provide long-term security without creating dependency. "Sir," Caroline reported during their evening meeting, "we've structured everything to maintain Jasmine's dignity while providing comprehensive support. The legal framework ensures transparency and accountability while giving her maximum flexibility in how she uses the resources." Theodore's son Jonathan, fresh out of college with idealistic views about social responsibility, joined the planning session via video call from his apartment across town. "Dad, this sounds like exactly the kind of direct, personal philanthropy that creates real change," Jonathan said enthusiastically. "Most of our foundation work feels abstract, but this is concrete help for someone who has already proven her character." By Wednesday evening, the Ashfield team had developed a presentation that would offer Jasmine opportunities that seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. Full educational funding for any university or program she chose, sufficient financial support to ensure she and Ruby never faced poverty again, and resources to pursue her own charitable interests. But Theodore insisted on one crucial element. The presentation needed to emphasize opportunity rather than charity, investment rather than assistance. Jasmine had demonstrated her worthiness through her actions, not through need alone. "This isn't about rescue," Theodore told his team. "This is about recognizing exceptional character and providing resources that match someone's demonstrated values." Thursday morning, Theodore prepared for what he knew would be one of the most important conversations of his life, not because of the money involved, but because he was about to witness how genuine character responded to life-changing opportunity. Thursday morning, Theodore Ashfield dressed carefully in his best suit, not to impress, but to show respect for the significance of the moment he was about to create. Accompanied by Caroline Webb and attorney Maxwell Brennan, he drove through Portland's morning traffic toward Riverside Heights, carrying documents that would transform Jasmine Rivers' entire world. "Sir," Caroline said as they approached the modest duplex, "are you certain you want to present this offer so directly? Usually we work through intermediaries for major philanthropic initiatives." "Caroline, yesterday a 16-year-old girl looked at a stranger in need and gave away her last $5 without hesitation," Theodore replied. "The least I can do is show her the same directness and honesty she showed me." When they knocked on the door at 10 a.m., Ruby Rivers answered with understandable confusion. 3 well-dressed strangers with official documents arriving at her home could mean many things, few of them positive in her experience. "Mrs. Rivers, my name is Theodore Ashfield. I'm here to speak with your granddaughter Jasmine about something that happened yesterday at Patterson's pharmacy." Ruby's protective instincts immediately activated. "Jasmine's at school. Whatever this is about, I should be present." "Actually, Mrs. Rivers, this concerns you as well," Theodore said gently. "Would it be possible to call Jasmine home? I promise you this is very good news." 30 minutes later, Jasmine hurried through the front door, having left school with permission after the principal received a call from someone identifying themselves as representing a major philanthropic foundation. Her mind raced with possibilities, none of them approaching the reality she was about to encounter. When she saw the man from the pharmacy sitting in her grandmother's small living room, surrounded by official-looking documents and accompanied by professional associates, her first thought was panic. Had she somehow violated a law by giving him money? Was there some regulation about financial transactions she had unknowingly broken? "Jasmine," Theodore said, standing as she entered, "thank you for coming home. Please sit down. I have some things to tell you that I think will surprise you." As Theodore began explaining his true identity, Jasmine's confusion deepened. The desperate man who had needed $5 for his wife's medication was claiming to be the CEO of one of Portland's largest companies, worth billions of dollars. "Yesterday at the pharmacy, you gave me your last $5 to help buy medication for my wife," Theodore continued. "What you didn't know is that I was conducting what I called an authenticity test, trying to see how people would treat someone they thought was struggling." Ruby leaned forward, her grandmother's intuition sensing something extraordinary was unfolding. Most people ignored my obvious distress. Others showed impatience. But you, a teenager who clearly had her own financial struggles, gave me the money I needed without expecting anything in return. Theodore gestured to Maxwell Brennan, who opened his briefcase and withdrew a formal document. "Jasmine, your act of kindness reminded me why I started doing philanthropic work in the first place. It restored my faith in human generosity and showed me what genuine character looks like." He paused, allowing the weight of his next words to register fully. "I would like to offer you a full scholarship to any university in the country, plus graduate school if you choose. Additionally, I'm establishing a trust fund that will ensure you and your grandmother never have to worry about money again." The silence in the small living room was profound. Ruby's hand flew to her chest, and Jasmine felt as though she couldn't breathe. "Furthermore," Theodore continued, "I'm creating the Jasmine Rivers Foundation for Youth Philanthropy, with an initial funding of $1 million that you will oversee to help other young people facing the challenges you've experienced." Jasmine finally found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. I don't understand. All I did was give you $5. "No, Jasmine," Theodore replied, his own voice thick with emotion. "You gave me much more than $5. You gave me hope that genuine kindness still exists in the world. And now I want to give you the resources to share that kindness on a scale you've never imagined possible." The teenager who had worked double shifts to help pay for her grandmother's medication, who had worn the same 3 outfits to school to save money, who had given away her last dollar to help a stranger, was being offered opportunities that transcended her wildest dreams, all because she had chosen compassion when she had nothing left to give. Within 48 hours of Theodore Ashfield's life-changing visit to the Rivers duplex, word of Jasmine's extraordinary story began spreading through Portland's educational and philanthropic communities, creating ripple effects that extended far beyond one family's transformation. Mrs. Dorothy Hammond, Jasmine's guidance counselor, received a call from Caroline Webb requesting Jasmine's complete academic records and college preparation materials. What Hammond discovered during that conversation left her speechless. Her most promising student, who had never applied for scholarships due to pride and lack of resources, was being offered opportunities that surpassed anything the school had ever facilitated. "This is unprecedented," Hammond told Principal Angela Foster during their emergency meeting. "We're talking about unlimited educational funding, family financial security, and resources for Jasmine to establish her own charitable foundation. This isn't just changing one student's life, it's transforming what's possible." The story reached local media when Maya Johnson, a reporter for the Portland Tribune, received an anonymous tip about an extraordinary act of philanthropy occurring in Riverside Heights. Her initial skepticism dissolved when she confirmed the details through multiple sources and realized she was documenting something genuinely remarkable. Teens, $5 kindness leads to $1 million transformation, became the headline that captured national attention within days. Television stations picked up the story, social media amplified it globally, and suddenly Jasmine Rivers became a symbol of how small acts of kindness could create extraordinary change. At Murphy's Diner, the impact was immediate and profound. Lorraine Mitchell found herself fielding calls from reporters, while regular customers expressed amazement that their quiet, hard-working teenage waitress had been living such a challenging life while maintaining such grace and generosity. "We all knew Jasmine was special," Eddie Morse told a television crew, "but none of us realized how much she was sacrificing or how much character it took for her to keep helping others while struggling herself." The diner experienced an unexpected surge in business, as people came hoping to meet the young woman whose story had touched them. Tips for all employees increased dramatically as customers felt inspired to pay forward the generosity they had witnessed through Jasmine's example. At Riverside High School, Jasmine's story became a catalyst for broader discussions about hidden struggles students might be facing and the importance of supporting one another. Caleb Waters, her best friend, organized a student-led initiative to identify and assist classmates dealing with similar challenges. "Jazz never asked for help, never complained, and always put others first," Caleb explained to the school newspaper. "How many other students are struggling in silence? Her story shows us we need to look out for each other better." Theodore's business colleagues initially expressed skepticism about his decision to publicly associate with such a personal philanthropic gesture. Some questioned whether the attention might compromise his privacy or create unrealistic expectations for similar interventions. But the public response overwhelmed any concerns. Ashfield Technologies' stock price increased 8% in the weeks following the story's release, and the company received thousands of positive communications from customers and potential business partners impressed by Theodore's character-focused approach to giving. Margaret Ashfield found her children's foundation inundated with requests from families facing similar struggles, and applications for educational assistance increased by 400%. The foundation expanded its staff to handle the volume and develop new programs specifically designed to identify and support young people, demonstrating exceptional character despite challenging circumstances. Jasmine's story reminded people that transformative philanthropy isn't just about need, it's about recognizing and rewarding the values we want to see more of in the world. Margaret explained to Foundation board members, most significantly, the story inspired copycat acts of generosity across the country. Social media filled with accounts of people helping strangers, businesses establishing character-based scholarship programs, and wealthy individuals reconsidering how they approached philanthropic giving. The hashtag #ChooseJasmineChallenge began trending as people shared stories of small acts of kindness they had performed or witnessed, creating a viral movement that demonstrated how one teenager's choice to help a stranger had inspired thousands of others to examine their own capacity for generosity. But for Jasmine herself, the most important consequence was deeply personal, the knowledge that her instinct to help others, even when she could barely help herself, had been validated in the most extraordinary way possible. 6 months after Theodore Ashfield's limousine had pulled up to her duplex, Jasmine Rivers stood in the lecture hall at Stanford University, delivering her first presentation as a freshman in the pre-med program she had once thought impossible to afford. Her transformation from struggling teenager to empowered philanthropist had been remarkable. But perhaps more impressive was how she had maintained her essential character throughout the process. The academic transition had been smoother than anyone expected. Despite her challenging high school circumstances, Jasmine's intellectual curiosity and study habits had prepared her well for rigorous college coursework. Her professors noted her exceptional analytical abilities and her unique perspective on healthcare access issues. Informed by her grandmother's medical struggles, Jasmine brings real-world experience to abstract concepts, explained Dr. Patricia Lawson, her organic chemistry professor. When we discuss drug pricing and healthcare accessibility, she speaks from personal knowledge that enriches everyone's understanding. But education was only one aspect of Jasmine's transformation. The Jasmine Rivers Foundation for Youth Philanthropy had become her most meaningful project, allowing her to identify and assist other young people facing circumstances similar to her own previous situation. Working with Dr. Helena Torres, she had developed criteria that emphasized character over need alone, seeking recipients who demonstrated kindness, resilience, and community commitment despite personal challenges. In 6 months, the foundation had assisted 47 young people with scholarships, family support, and mentorship programs. "We're not just looking for students with good grades," Jasmine explained during a foundation board meeting. "We're looking for young people who, like I was, are helping others even when they can barely help themselves." Ruby Rivers had experienced her own transformation, though she had been initially resistant to accepting the lifestyle changes that Theodore's generosity had made possible. At 68, after decades of financial struggle, she found it difficult to believe their security was permanent. "Baby girl, I keep waiting for someone to tell us this was all a mistake," Ruby confided to Jasmine during one of their weekly phone calls. But gradually, Ruby had begun embracing the opportunities her newfound security provided. Her arthritis treatment improved dramatically when cost was no longer a barrier to proper care. She had returned to her lifelong love of sewing, creating quilts that the foundation auctioned to raise additional funds for youth programs. Theodore Ashfield had discovered that his connection to Jasmine had reinvigorated his entire approach to business and philanthropy. Board meetings at Ashfield Technologies now regularly included discussions about character-based decision-making and the long-term value of integrity over short-term profits. Working with Jasmine reminded me that the best investments aren't always financial. Theodore told a business conference audience, "Sometimes the highest returns come from recognizing and supporting exceptional character." Margaret Ashfield had been particularly moved by observing Jasmine's adjustment to sudden wealth and opportunity. Despite having access to resources beyond her previous imagination, Jasmine continued working part-time at Murphy's Diner during school breaks, maintaining connections to her community and honoring the relationships that had sustained her during difficult times. Many people in Jasmine's situation might have completely abandoned their previous life, Margaret noted during a foundation strategy meeting. Instead, she's using her new opportunities to strengthen her connections to the community that shaped her character. The most meaningful transformation had been in how Jasmine viewed her role in the world. The teenager who had once worried about affording textbooks now found herself in study groups with students from wealthy families. But she used these interactions to bridge understanding between different socio-economic experiences. "I learned that being poor doesn't make you less intelligent or less worthy," Jasmine told her doormates during a late-night discussion about privilege and opportunity. "It just makes everything harder. Now that the barriers have been removed for me, I want to remove them for others." Her relationship with Theodore had evolved into something resembling a mentorship, with regular conversations about business ethics, philanthropy strategies, and the responsibilities that came with wealth and influence. Theodore found these discussions as educational as Jasmine did, gaining insights into perspectives he had never previously considered. She challenges me to think about the human impact of every business decision, Theodore told Margaret during dinner one evening. Having someone who lived with the consequences of economic inequality in your inner circle changes how you see everything. Caleb Waters, Jasmine's best friend from high school, had been initially worried that her new circumstances might change their relationship. Instead, he found that Jasmine's transformation had inspired him to pursue his own goals more ambitiously. With Jasmine's encouragement and foundation support, he was now attending Portland Community College and planning to transfer to a 4-year university. Jazz always believed in other people more than she believed in herself. Caleb reflected during a foundation interview. Now she has the resources to turn that belief into action. At Murphy's Diner, Jasmine's story had created a lasting legacy. Lorraine Mitchell had established the Jasmine Rivers Employee Scholarship Fund, providing educational assistance to other young workers facing similar challenges. The diner had become a gathering place for community members inspired to create their own small acts of generosity. She showed us that you don't need to be wealthy to make a difference, Eddie Morse explained to visitors. Sometimes the most important thing you can give is kindness when you have nothing else left. The most profound transformation was perhaps in Jasmine's understanding of her own worth and potential. The girl who had once measured success by survival, making rent, affording medication, passing classes despite exhaustion, now thought in terms of impact and legacy. Her academic advisor at Stanford, Dr. Vivian Nash, noted the unique perspective Jasmine brought to pre-med studies. She doesn't just want to become a doctor for personal achievement. She wants to address healthcare accessibility issues from a policy level, using her foundation work to complement her medical practice. As her first year at Stanford concluded, Jasmine had maintained her 3.9 GPA while managing foundation responsibilities and maintaining community connections. But more importantly, she had proven that sudden wealth and opportunity could enhance rather than corrupt someone whose character had been forged through genuine struggle and sustained kindness. 2 years after giving her last $5 to a stranger at Patterson's Pharmacy, Jasmine Rivers returned to Riverside Heights for the dedication of the Theodore Ashfield Community Center, a facility designed to provide educational support, healthcare resources, and financial literacy programs for working families throughout Portland. Standing before an audience that included her former teachers, co-workers from Murphy's Diner, neighborhood friends, and the Ashfield family, Jasmine reflected on a journey that had transformed not only her own life, but had created ripples of positive change throughout her community. 2 years ago, I thought success meant surviving each day, paying our bills, and maybe graduating high school, Jasmine told the packed auditorium. I never imagined that one moment of choosing kindness over self-preservation would lead to opportunities I couldn't have dreamed possible. The Jasmine Rivers Foundation had grown beyond anyone's initial expectations. With careful management and continued funding from Theodore's personal foundation, it now provided comprehensive support to over 200 young people annually across the Pacific Northwest. The success stories were remarkable. Former recipients had gone on to attend prestigious universities, start their own businesses, and create their own charitable initiatives. Theodore Ashfield, now 64 and preparing to transition leadership of his company to his son Jonathan, had found in Jasmine a reminder of why business success mattered beyond personal wealth. Accumulation. Jasmine taught me that the highest return on investment comes from recognizing character and providing resources for exceptional people to multiply their positive impact, Theodore explained during his keynote address. She didn't just inspire one act of generosity. She created a model for how successful people can identify and support the next generation of leaders. Ruby Rivers, now 70 and in better health than she had enjoyed in years, had become an unexpected community leader herself. Her quilting circles had evolved into financial literacy workshops for seniors, and her storytelling about surviving hardship with dignity had inspired other grandparents raising children in challenging circumstances. That child taught me that pride isn't about refusing help, Ruby reflected during the ceremony. It's about using whatever resources you have, even if it's just $5, to help others. When we received Theodore's blessing, Jasmine didn't change who she was. She just got more opportunities to be herself on a bigger scale. The transformation of Murphy's Diner had become a symbol of how individual acts of kindness could transform entire communities. The restaurant now served as an informal community center, with bulletin boards advertising local assistance programs, study groups for students, and job networking for adults seeking better opportunities. Lorraine Mitchell, the diner manager, had been promoted to regional operations manager for the restaurant chain, with responsibility for implementing character-based hiring and community engagement programs across 40 locations. Jasmine showed us that the young people we employ aren't just workers, they're community leaders in training. Mitchell explained to business journalists studying the company's employee development success. When you invest in character, you get returns that show up in ways you never expected. Dr. Helena Torres had documented the Foundation's impact for academic study, finding that character-based philanthropy produced better long-term outcomes than need-based giving alone. Recipients of Jasmine Rivers Foundation support showed higher graduation rates, stronger community engagement, and greater likelihood of establishing their own charitable activities. Traditional philanthropy often creates dependency, Torres explained during a university conference. Character-based giving creates multipliers, people who use their assistance to generate positive change for others. The most significant legacy was, perhaps, the shift in how Portland's philanthropic community approached charitable giving. Inspired by Jasmine's story, several wealthy families had adopted similar approaches, seeking to identify and support young people who demonstrated exceptional character despite challenging circumstances. Mayor Patricia Sullivan announced during the dedication ceremony that Portland would become the first city in the nation to establish municipal character-based scholarship programs, using Jasmine's foundation as a model for identifying and supporting promising young leaders. As the ceremony concluded, Jasmine found herself surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by the ripple effects of her initial act of kindness. Former Murphy's Diner co-workers who were now attending college, neighborhood children who had received foundation scholarships, and community members who had been inspired to create their own small acts of generosity. Theodore approached her as the crowd began to disperse, carrying a small wrapped box. "Jasmine, I have something for you," he said, his voice carrying the warmth that had developed between them over 2 years of mentorship. Inside the box was a simple silver pendant engraved with the words "Kindness multiplies" and the date of their pharmacy encounter. "This is to remind you that the $5 you gave me that day wasn't a transaction. It was a seed," Theodore said. "Look what it grew into." As Jasmine hugged Theodore, then Ruby, then the dozens of people whose lives had been touched by her story, she understood that her greatest achievement wasn't the scholarship to Stanford, the foundation resources, or the financial security. Her greatest achievement was proving that character matters more than circumstances, that kindness is always worth the cost, and that sometimes the smallest acts of generosity can create the most extraordinary transformations. The girl who had given her last dollar to help a stranger had learned that some investments pay dividends for generations. The stranger she had helped had turned out to be the catalyst for her dreams, but more importantly, she had become the catalyst for countless others who would benefit from the legacy of choosing compassion when it seemed impossible to afford. As Jasmine walked through the Riverside Heights, neighborhood that evening, past Patterson's pharmacy where everything had begun. She carried with her the knowledge that kindness truly did multiply, sometimes in ways so extraordinary that they seemed impossible until they became beautifully, permanently real. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.